Today I want to talk about a different kind of a topic than I've normally made videos about in the past. You are used to me talking about mental health topics and primarily topics relating to eating disorders and to various aspects of recovery. Today, I want to talk a little bit about grieving and specifically the difference between grieving and mourning, because I think people often get it confused and sometimes people actually are unsure of the difference. They kind of switch the two around a lot, or they think that they're maybe the same thing. So the first thing to explain is that grief is an internal process. It's not external. It's not something that people do. It's an internal process. With grieving, lots of different emotions come into play, so you may have heard about anger and denial and acceptance and things like that in relation to grieving. And those emotions often come into play at different points, sometimes at the same time, sometimes in a different order for different people. But the grieving process, however internal and however many emotions are at play, is different for everyone. Mourning, however, is grief that's expressed to the world. Mourning is how someone works through their grief. So it is a process. And mourning basically means that someone is doing different things to process their grief and to express their grief to others. They are trying to show what they're feeling on the inside, so to speak. So mourning can be someone writing a blog. It can be someone participating in a walk for a cause, perhaps a walk to support cancer research if a loved one died of cancer, or a walk to prevent suicide if a loved one took their own life. So there are different things that people do. It could be maybe musical expression, dance expression. It can be the outward crying that someone does in front of others or with others. It can be the kind of things that someone talks about in a support group. And mourning is very important. It's not wrong. It's not abnormal. It doesn't mean that someone is depressed. Mourning is part of grieving. And I was always taught when I was in graduate school for social work that grief without mourning can be very destructive. Mourning is actually healthy. When there is grief, that internal process, and there's no mourning, nowhere for it to go or ways for it to be expressed, that's how people succumb to demons and succumb to poor coping mechanisms, destructive things. Alcohol, drugs, staying inside for days and weeks and months at a time, completely withdrawing, not being able to work, not being able to see other people, not being able to continue friendships, and not taking care of themselves, not having a healthy relationship with life. So the mourning part of grieving is extremely, extremely vital. Without mourning, people often get stuck and can't move forward from their grief. Grief is not something that people get over. You will never get over the loss of someone, but we can heal. So as we grieve, we heal, and it always kind of sticks with us, and if we're lucky and we have the right tools and the right support system, we're able to move forward in our life in spite of the loss. So mourning's a healthy process, but it's different for everyone. It looks different for everyone. Then there is something called reconciliation, and reconciliation is actually part of the mourning process, and it's a word that I don't think society at large really discusses. Reconciliation is, in its simplest terms, adaptation. Reconciliation is growing accustomed to a new life without the person that you lost. Part of reconciliation in grief and mourning is processing the reality of death in outward ways. So I kept a blog when my husband took his own life, and I would write nightly on that widow blog. And when I did that, that was part of reconciliation. It was an outward process for me that was healthy. Another part of reconciliation is allowing all those sad, terrible feelings, but at the same time, understanding that life does still go on. You can feel pain, but you don't succumb completely to that pain. You allow all the emotions that you feel, but you still continue to make steps forward every day in your life. That's all part of reconciliation. And then another part of reconciliation is altering the thinking about the person who's now gone. You may have to adapt to the fact that the person is no longer physically here. So when you thought about the person that you loved and cared about, you always thought most likely of their body, their physical presence, how they looked, and things they said to you, and things that you did together. But now, as reconciliation takes place, you're forced to think of them in a different way. Maybe it's more of a spiritual way, or maybe it's a collection of loving memories. You can no longer physically touch or hug or hold on to that person, but that person is not gone and erased from your thoughts and emotions. Another part of reconciliation is developing a new life, or maybe even a new role or a new identity. When someone is removed from your life in such a way, by death, you are maybe forced to reevaluate what your role is. If you were a wife and you no longer have a husband, you're altering some things. If you were a mother and you no longer have a child, you're altering some things. If you were a daughter and now you've lost a parent, you're altering some things. And there are many different roles and relationships as far as losing people, but we all have to adapt. And then another part of reconciliation is finding some kind of meaning in death. It doesn't have to mean that you think it's a great thing or you're completely at peace with what has happened, especially if it was something tragic. But it's understanding that things have changed and maybe you'll be stronger now because of it. Maybe because of a death, so many other things have happened along the way, and you now have things in your life that maybe you didn't have before. Maybe there is a new cause that you're working towards. I know you've probably seen along the way that when someone dies, maybe it's a child, the parents, they might create a foundation to keep the memory alive and also help other people. And as they're helping dozens and hundreds and thousands of people with a similar issue to what their child struggled with, they feel a sense of connection and fulfillment and meaning in the death, even though that doesn't mean that they're glad the death occurred. And then the last part of reconciliation is developing a support system, which is so important for so many areas of our lives. You need people to help you through this whole messed up process of grief. It doesn't have to be an army of 50 people. It doesn't even have to be an army of 10. It can be a good core 1 or 2 people that are your support network, but they are vital. So I hope that sheds some light on some of the definitions that have to do with grief and loss. And even though grief and loss is not a topic I've normally done videos about in the past, it is something that I have personal and professional experience with. So I'm thinking I might do some videos in regards to that along the way, now that I seem to be back to making some videos again. So until next time, I hope you have a great week. Take care.